starting a little bit behind. We have a speaker that is running behind, and we were trying to give him a few more minutes to get here, and hopefully he does. I know that he's coming from New Jersey, so hopefully he makes it in time. I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. CASA of Cecil County is very excited to present this experience to all of you. My name is Erin Grauer, and I am the Outreach Specialist at CASA. For those that don't know, CASA of Cecil County is a fairly new organization in our county. It stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. We take volunteers from the community and provide them with training in order to speak on behalf of abused and neglected children under court protection. Our volunteers spend one-on-one time with the children, along with gathering other pieces of information from other parties involved. Volunteers provide important, imperative information directly to the judge, ensuring that all of the children have a voice in the court system and their information does not slip through the cracks. We become their eyes and the ears. In order to advocate in the best way possible for these children, we are always looking for better ways to understand their circumstances, to try our hardest to understand what they are going through, and to learn how to better serve these most vulnerable members of our community. That is what brings us here tonight. A while back, I was approached about Mr. Green and his desire to share his story. He felt that it was placed upon his heart to open up about his experience in order to help other children navigate their way through similar circumstances. We are extremely fortunate to have Derek here with us tonight, along with our other speakers. They are here to give us a first-hand perspective into the world of foster care, a perspective that we cannot get from a textbook. They will each share with us some of their story and explain to us what they needed from the adults in their lives, and in turn what we can offer to those children we are striving to help. Whether you're a social worker, a teacher, a foster parent, a CASA, an attorney, or a CASA to be, we are all here to do the best that we can for these children. So thank you again for coming. Now please allow me to introduce our speakers for this evening. We have Mr. Derek Green, we have Mr. Jesse Shiflett, and we have Miss Billy Travellini. We would like to allow each speaker to have their full amount of time to share with us. So if you have any questions for them, we have saved approximately 20 minutes at the end of our evening where we will welcome questions. So we would like to get started. Mr. Derek Green.
How you guys doing? Super excited to be here to share a little bit of my life, a little bit where I'm at now, and where I think I'll be headed with support of my family and loved ones. So just to give you a little, can everyone hear me? Yeah. All right, cool. Just to give you a little background of where I am now. I am currently a junior at Lancaster Bible College. I am studying health and physical education, aspiring to be a teacher, physical education teacher. I'm scheduled to graduate in the fall of 2020. So just a couple of things that I've been able to do in recent years. I actually played college basketball here at Cecil College in 2015. The last time that we put up a banner, actually, a regional championship on freshman team. It was really exciting. I've been able to intern with a couple of ministries in the county, fellowship with Christian athletes. I've been able just to share my experiences through that with a lot of kids that were from similar situations like mine, troubled neighborhoods, things of that nature. I've also been able to serve in the community through my church independently, been able to mentor some kids that just need some extra love, so that's been exciting as well. I have my aunt here with me and my grandma. My other family couldn't make it. Yeah, that's kind of like where I am now, and I just want to give you some context for what's going on. So how I actually got into foster care. So I went in at a really early age. My mom and dad really struggled with alcohol and drug addiction. My mom, she had 6 kids at the time. I was the youngest of 6. And when I went in, I was about 5 years old. Yeah, it was really, really tough going in. I actually was placed in so the first home that I was placed in, I was placed with 2 older siblings. At that point in time, you know, we had no really like plan in terms of like permanent placement. Rights hadn't yet been terminated by the courts and things of that nature, so we kind of just went in with like no expectation at all, really. So like things were really hard from that point on. So in that home, it was a 2-parent home that were both parents were licensed to be foster parents. And I just want to say this: I understand, and I've been able to meet since I've lived in here in Cecil County, that there are very good foster parents here in the county, and I'm super appreciative of those people. I've actually been able to get to know some of them very well on a personal level, get to know their kids. They're really awesome. However, like I've had experiences that were a lot different for me. So just to not like, I know some of you may know a lot of people who are in this county or in near counties that have people who do open up their homes to kids and treat them very well. That was not my experience. I just want to say that as we move forward. And so the first home that I was in faced a lot of challenges. I had my two older brothers. They were close in age, like heading into teenage years. So they kind of had a different kind of attitude towards going into foster care at that age. Everything was kind of very traumatic. Being taken from my mom. So we all kind of went through a lot of it together, though. So like physical abuse was definitely at the top of the list for all of us. Just watching my brothers go through some of the stuff that they went through, and also experiencing on a personal level was really tough. Family dynamic was very like stifling. A lot of times, like when you are a foster child in a placement, you aren't empowered to become the best version of you. Like it's funny to think about like a lot of families that I've seen now and family dynamics I've seen over the years where like, you know, parents are always like, you know, speak up, give your opinion, like grow into who you want to be. And so like in foster placement for me, especially in the first home, that was never really the case. It was more of a like, you know, we want to keep you as under control and as rapid as possible, which was really tough to go through for me and my brothers. So over about a couple of years, as I got older, I ended up being the only brother left in that placement. One of my brothers got placed in DC, and the other one got placed in a family in Perry Hall. So during that time while I was by myself, like a lot of the abuse started to also ramp up. Can't really say why. Obviously, you know, things just happened, so I really can't speak to why, but that was the case. So shortly after that, though, I ended up in my second home. Still no real plan in terms of like moving forward, like long term. And I actually got placed with one of my siblings that I lived with in the first home, which was good. Like I appreciated like being around them. It's always good to go do something hard with someone else that you love. So in my second home, physical abuse is still probably like at the top of the list. And when I mean physical abuse, I don't mean like discipline. I mean like excessive, like you know, hand and fist type of things, kicking, and things of that nature. So very excessiveness. Emotional abuse started to kick on for me. I think a lot of things that get overlooked a lot of times with kids that are in placements is that emotionally, like, it's draining. Like just like any other relationship you have in your life, you know, to feel like you're being taken from a lot of times is like draining. So it was really hard to like go through that stuff and kind of make up like what was the purpose there. Also, like mental abuse was a big thing as well. As you start to get older, I feel like while I got older, it was like I couldn't like really make up why things were happening. You know, and you know the people that are doing these things to you are the closest ones to you at that time. And so like, you know, they speaking into your life and like trying to get you to think things about why things are happening, but not really, you know, really trying to resolve them. They're just trying to justify their actions and things of that nature. So it was really tough. Like I said, like a manipulation, like I was saying, like showing affection after abuse was really tough, like because you don't really have anybody there to kind of like facilitate any type of break from that. So it's kind of like the person that you just got abused from is kind of the person you have to like console you in that time of like grieving. so it was really tough. So in the second home is where like I began to express myself more, I guess you would say. I started to like, if I didn't like a situation or say I got in trouble at school, I just began to like run away, whether that be like after school time or like about to play, I just didn't come home. Things of that nature. Never really manifested into anything. Kind of just like a bunch of phone calls to a bunch of people to say like, oh, he didn't come home. Things of that nature. I remember actually one time I ran away and like after school, and I remember staying at a friend's house, and I was just hoping that like his mom just didn't send me home. Like she was just gonna like be like, oh yeah, like you just stayed the night, like don't even talk to your parents or anything. You could just kick it. Like I was hoping like that was one of the things, but it wasn't, unfortunately. And so I ended up just like walking around that night, and then like I got found by like a police officer that was kind of, I guess, was looking for me in the area, and he kind of just took me back home, no questions asked. And that was kind of like the same type of response I got from a lot of other people as well. Like social workers were like, you know, all right, yeah, you're back home, like you're good now. And it's like, no, it wasn't good. But yeah, that's kind of like the response I got. So that was upsetting as I reflect on it now. So also during this time, I was in 7th grade, so just give some context. So my first home started at 5. So I left that home when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Stayed in the second home until I was about like 11, 12-ish. And so at this time I'm in 7th grade, and during the school year, I was facing a lot of issues. Obviously, things translated from the home into school, and how I behaved and how I was attending in class. So I got in a lot of trouble at school, suspended a lot, and I ended up getting placed in these like long-term respite placements near where I actually live. So there was a family that was bilingual that I got placed with for like long periods of time, whether it be like 2 weeks, 3 weeks out of that school year. And so it would be like I would leave from home, from my foster care placement, go to this placement for 2 weeks, but like it's in like not even a mile away from where I'm actually like my foster placement. And so I still see my same friends, like I ride the same bus essentially, and like, but I'm just going home to like a new placement for 2 and 3 weeks at a time. That placement was probably just as bad on a different level, being bilingual. Obviously I'm not bilingual, and so it was tough to like communicate. The culture was just different. You know, the father in that home was like domestically abusive, so that had like a different like spin on things. No real like accountability, so I kind of just like did what I wanted, kind of thing. And so that was kind of like weird at the same time. And so that kind of placed me like was drawing to the end. That summer I ended up getting placed in another home. My aunt that's here with us tonight, she actually taught at my middle school that I was attending during that time. She was one of the special education teachers in like the behavior classroom at Edgewood during that time, and she kind of saw a lot of things I was going through. So when I left the second placement that I was in during that time, she took the opportunity to look into seeking some type of like you know, adoption, whatever way she could kind of get me out of that situation and allow her to open up her home to me. Unfortunately, during that summer, like things just didn't go as planned, and so I ended up getting placed in a home in Baltimore with one of my younger siblings. But at this time, I had not ever met him because like my mom, she had like 2 sets of kids, so like I hadn't really realized, I had never met him. So so I get placed in this 4th home in Baltimore, going into my 8th grade year, which was better, but still it had its different type of challenges. And so I'm in this 4th home. I'm not getting physically abused, and that's one thing I'll touch on later. Is just like just because one problem isn't a problem in one home doesn't mean that it necessarily is good, because you still have other problems that like kind of take that Palm's place. So I'll get into it a little bit later. But so the fourth home, she had like biological kids that were her own. One was my age, which made things really tough because now it was a competition, right, about every little thing. And I lost that competition most of the time. And so in terms of like just getting like any like attention or whether like confidence or affirmation about anything, things was just tough in that regard. So so like I'm 8th grade is fine, kind of fitting in, things are going okay, I guess. I performed like average in high school, like academically, like I wasn't great. And like I played like a lot of sports, so I was like a sport athlete, but like I didn't really excel at anything. Like it wasn't no like push to do anything like above what I was already doing, which I feel like that could have been like something that could really help me move forward. Like I said, like having someone your own age that is a biological kid in the home kind of can be like counterproductive to like how you want to move forward and like what are your goals and as a kid and like how you want to like grow and like what challenges you want to embrace and things of that nature. So it was like really tough to do so. So I graduate, everything's great, but it was like the bare minimum kind of thing. Like yeah, like I graduated, but it wasn't nothing really to that. After finishing high school, still really no like advice about life plan, like how to move forward. So I was kind of left to my own devices to make decisions. If you leave a 17-year-old who is like spiteful and bitter to make decisions, you probably don't make the best ones. And so that's what happened. Kind of really had some friends that like I liked, probably wasn't the best for me at the time. Definitely started making like a lot of different social decisions that wasn't great. And also like logistical decisions with like making college decisions. So in Maryland, in foster care, like your college is free, like you're paid for. However, somehow I ended up taking out loans for things that I didn't need to. Like I said, when you're 17, you're left to your own devices, you make crazy decisions, and I did some of those. And so from that was kind of like my point I was speaking from. Also in that home, there was a biological father that lived there. That was the biological father of the kids that lived in the home, who was not a licensed foster parent. Because he had criminal charges, so there was no way he was going to be able to actually be licensed as a foster parent in the state of Maryland. But it was kind of like this unspoken rule in the house, like what stays here happens here type of thing. So that's kind of the idea behind that. And so just touching on some like major points that I feel like really stuck out to me as I was trying to prepare for this and trying to get a clarity of mind of what I felt like, what I really could have used like as a age and was growing up. So one of my big points was like family dynamics. Like I said, I find it very hard. You find it very hard as a kid to like accomplish anything if like you're mindful of the fact that like whatever you do won't be acknowledged at the same level. Like I could have. So I give you context for like a story. So my 9th grade year, very tiny individual, very tiny, about maybe 5 foot, maybe 100 pounds, soaking wet maybe. And so the biological kid that lived in the home with me that was my age, he was also going into his 9th grade year. My intention was not to try out for the football team, but I was just like, I'll try it and see what happens. His passion was football. However, that did not translate onto the field, and I ended up making a football team, and he did not, which was crazy in my eyes. However, I was happy that I made the football team. And so I ended up coming home that day from practice, had all my gear, felt good, like, yeah, like, what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, really excited about it. And I hadn't realized he hadn't made the football team yet. So, like, we came in from practice and stuff, and we just went straight to get our gear. So the people who didn't make it, like, I never saw them. So, like, they were, like, just out on the field. I guess they were talking to coaches or whatever. But I never saw them. So, like, came out, got my gear. I was just, like, headed home. I was like, oh, he must have already caught a ride home or something. So, and I'm just going home. He was already there. The foster parent at the time, she, like, saw me walk in. Because she didn't have no idea either. Neither did he. And so she saw me walk in with, like, all this gear. Like helmet, shoulder pads, all that stuff. And she's like, what's going on? Like, you got all this gear for it. Is that the other child's gear, her son's gear? And I was like, no, this is mine. This is it. Like, I made a football team. And so her first words were, well, Brian, well, his name is Brian. Well, Brian didn't. And so if you say anything to him about it, I'm gonna take you off of the team. Not a congratulations, not a I'm proud of you. And I know it sounds like minuscule, right? I know it sounds like really small. But for me, that was kind of reflective and kind of gives a great picture of what life was like in that home. And so like from that standpoint, like, you know, like I had a lot of games that year, no one attended, things of that nature. So I mean, like I said, like I know it seems small, but you can kind of like minimize it and say like, well, like you still have other things where a kid can be with. That was kind of like a reflection of what it was like. And so I think that type of mindset for a kid who's 12 years old or 13 as a freshman in high school wants to feel that affirmation. Like we all want that. Like, you know, most of you guys probably have like a significant other or someone that you're close with, and like you look for that affirmation in that person. And so like for a kid, like he's also looking for that too. And so that was something I was looking for, but I knew I wasn't gonna get it. So you look for it in other places, and as I grew up and started to age, like that's what I did, not knowing what kind of effect that would have on me. So I feel like a family dynamic is definitely something to pay attention to. How is the kid getting along in the home? How are they meshing with, like, you know, even the kids in their neighborhood? Like what are the differences? What can you do as a CASA worker or as a teacher or a support system to make sure that those things are being like not only like focused on, but making sure that like you're providing a platform and a foundation for those things to be established. So I think that's a big part of it. Also, I talked about manipulation also earlier. So like I think when you've been abused physically, emotionally, mentally, I think at a young age, at a high rate. So like if you're going through things that are like traumatic, I think it weakens you like mentally. So for me, I think that was definitely the case. So like you find it very hard to associate abuse as a bad thing, because if you acknowledge it as a bad thing as a young kid, that's all you have to think about. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, and no one wants to think that like everything they're going through is bad, right? So you associate it as other things. You put it in different boxes. You say, you know, oh, that's not that bad. It could be worse. Or I could have did this, or I could have did that. And I think like from that standpoint, like it's not healthy, and it's definitely not like productive or like gives the platform to like grow as an individual as you like grow up and stuff like that. So I feel like, and so like I said earlier, my foster parents like weren't very positive in this regard. So I think for me, I think a lot of like my foster parents knew that like, you know, you don't want to, I didn't want to associate everything. I didn't want to like always say like, oh, this is bad, or this is bad, or this is bad. And I think they acted accordingly to that, like kind of like, you know, you did deserve that, or type of things. And like I think it kind of just feeds into like that manipulation, and kind of like, you know, just makes it worse in that regard. So and so like I said, like, so therefore I feel like a CASA worker for me, like invested in my life, someone that's close to me, as someone that knows me, you know, not only know what I want, but knows me as an individual, could have just like sniffed that out. That's the things that like, you know, you don't necessarily have a scripted question to ask to get that out of a child, but it's more of a just like a intuition type thing, like something you feel when you're that connected and you're that like invested, and you're embracing in those like conversations on a daily basis. So those names aren't something you have to necessarily ask for, but they'll just like come out by just being with them. Like, you seem off today, what's up, like type of things. And so I think that would have been good for me. Also like talking about earlier, also like teachers and like support systems. For me, like I said, I played a lot of sports, but like I felt like I was like average at everything. Like I wasn't really like great, but I felt like I could have been, you know, like if certain things were provided for me, in terms of like just being a support, being consistent. I think a lot of kids like just want someone that's consistent. Have a lot of this transition, people in and out, people saying one thing but doing the other. Just having someone that's consistent like with their word, like how they go about things. They say something, they're gonna do it, type of things. And so for me, I think a CASA would have been super effective and like establish that relationship with teachers, coaches, mentors, even like friends, even to just allow them to know like some of the inner workings of things that I was going through at that time, because like no one wants to like go up to their coach or their teacher and say like, oh, my life sucks. Like, you know what I mean? Like no one wants to say that. So like just having someone that speak on their behalf, because a lot of kids won't speak up for themselves. And just the last point is just talk about like permanency plan. Like I said, like mentioned earlier, is that like I think it was never like talked about or like even like considered. I felt like to like actually find a plan for me or my siblings. Really, it was more of just like I kept going to placement where it was like well we'll think about it, or like we'll figure it out when it comes, if it type of thing. It's like it's no real plan, and if we all know like a lot of times we don't even plan for our day, it doesn't go like we wanted to. So just imagine someone, you're talking about planning for someone's life, someone's future, their aspiration, their goals, their dreams, the things that they want to get done. And so like that was never a thing. It was never existed. And so I think that was like one thing that really stuck out to me as I was thinking about it all. So like I said, like I think a CASA would just have been able to like nail that down and been like, no, like he is good at this, like he has shown promise in these areas, and so just like uplifting in that way. And I think it just would have been things would have just gone drastically different, in my opinion. Yeah, and so yeah, that's all I have. I thank you guys for allowing me to come.
Thank you so much, Derek. We're going to move right into our next speaker, and that is Mr. Jesse Shiflett.
Thank you, guys. All right, well, first of all, good job, Derek. Really enlightening. And one thing I'd like to first open up with CASA, anybody that's trying to be an advocate, wants to be an advocate, thinking about it, has done it, is one of the most amazing, rewarding things you can do, is helping a child. Like you don't get many more rewarding things. A lot of people don't think about these things a lot. We just kind of do our thing. But one thing I found is that anytime you help a child, you really do get like a real sensation of substance, like you're actually helping the world be better. And that's why I'm sure all you guys know that is why you want to help and are moving towards helping. So good job for all you guys for helping. And okay, so I guess I'll do a little background as to some of the things that I went through that got me into foster care, and some of the things that my advocate did that I think helped shape my whole future in a lot of ways. They were really terrific. And the other thing is, keep in mind, we all were kids before. We all have insights that we kind of forget, because as we get older, we are told not to be childish and everything like that, which is true, but, we have insight into, a lot of people always say that to me, like, how do you know how to help kids, or if, in particular areas where I'm helpful and I actually do well. And I kind of look at them perplexed a little bit, because I'm like, you were a kid. Like just think about it for a minute. You were a kid. You know what they're going through. Now the thing is, of course, as Derek showed, I'm sure I'll show you, if you don't go through this kind of stuff, it is strange to you. Plus, it's also strange to the child because we look at it as normal. And then as you get older, you start looking back and you're like, okay, that wasn't actually very normal at all. But that's one of the wonderful things about kids, is that they adapt that way. And that also could be one of the detriments too, is because they, like me, at one, as you'll see in one of my events, like I started thinking shoplifting was smart and clever, and I'm a genius, because I figured out how to rip off the man because my dad taught me, one of those things. But my story of foster care basically starts like right away out the womb. My mom and dad were alcoholic, drug addicts, everything that you could imagine, and then some. And I was the youngest of 5 at the time with my mother. and they just, which I guess was good at the time, just gave me to my grandparents, which made sense. And they were running around doing, anything that they wanted to do basically. So my grandmother tried to take care of us for a while, and we ended up going into the foster system and almost being adopted several times. But we got a little bit lucky in some ways because we ended up just doing the rotating with different relatives. But the relatives weren't very, quality. So we got into like one of the first things that took place. We were almost adopted, and then when at first you don't want to be adopted. You don't want, even when you're with abusive guardians and stuff like that, as a child, you don't know anything else, you don't know. So you're actually scared of adoption. When you actually don't, and then the strange thing is that the people that adopt you, most of the time the people that are adopting kids really want children. So it's a whole different experience, like Derek was saying, like when, somebody that's actually checking in on you, saying, what are you doing? What do you like? What are you going to do today? And when you don't have that, it's sometimes for a while you actually feel strange, even someone even doing that for you, because you're almost like, it's just not normal to you. So for, I'd say, the first few years, we just bounced back between our grandmother, a couple of our uncles, a few of our aunts, and foster homes. And some of the more traumatic things that stuck with me was, like, for instance, when I was about 4 or 5, I had a particularly cruel, kind of wicked stepmother set up with my aunt, my uncle's wife. He was great. He would go to work, and then I don't know why, I guess because we were like competing with her kids, one of those things. Because, adults, everybody has their issues, everybody. So one time, it was picture day, and I was supposed to wear a particular outfit, but I wanted to wear my favorite shirt, I put it on, and I came out, and she would always like grab her face, and I really really injure your face. But this particular time, I was at the door, and she made a few curse words and everything like that, grabbed my face, and then ripped the shirt off me, and then kicked me down the stairs, and actually dislocated my knee before school and everything like that. And the other thing that's strange about that, it was traumatic, but it was also normal, because we went through that all the time. We had another uncle that would get drunk, and he would put a bunch of us kids together and actually make us street fight each other with his friends, just around you guys watching. Kind of weird, right, when you think about it. And those situations, though, they do have strange ways of also giving you strength that other kids don't get. When you're tested very young, very fast, and you don't, you're not thinking about all that stuff then. But with hindsight now, I feel like part of me has learned to be semi-grateful for it, because it you got a lot of the bruising out of the way, where you feel like pretty fast. And then later, when other things that a lot of people think is very traumatic, you're like, oh, this is nothing. Oh, that's all that happened, So that's actually kind of one of the upsides to it in a strange, psychological way that, sometimes you don't know if you don't go through it. But one of the things, as advocates, you have all different levels of advocates. You have people that are just there to do what they can. They're not particularly, good at it, but that doesn't mean that, it's one of those things. There's different levels, of course, but I remember one of the things that stuck out to me was I would always, whenever I'd go to the foster care or an advocate or people that were normal compared to, the people I was with, I would start noticing. I'm like, wow, these people say I love you to each other. These people ask each other how their day was, all this other stuff. And then when I'd go home to, my family, they would absolutely none of that. And really, they would actually abuse you psychologically. They'd find out something that you didn't do properly, and they'd be almost like they were upset about their own childhood, which could be the case. They could have a lot of latent psychological problems that they're passing down to you. But you know, I guess the greatest type of advocate you could be would be a mentor of sorts. You know, somebody that actually gets a child through it, not just through it, but also point in a direction that is not what they would normally have with their normal home, as Derek said. And I'll tell you one thing: it makes interesting people. It does that, you know, in a cruel way, but you know, people with battle scars and everything like that, they can get, like the why you guys are here, give you insight into things that you can't get back in time to go through anything. But one of my favorite mentor stories is the Karate Kid with Mr. Miyagi. Everybody remember that? All the old timers. Sammy. And if you remember that movie, how he was teaching his student, was it Kung Fu, without him even knowing he was teaching it. And I think that's like an awesome lesson. I think that's why everybody loves that movie anyway, and you don't think about why you love it, but that's one of the reasons everybody loves it. And that kind of always stuck with me. And like with kids, it's very important to, there's that fine line of, hey, we're just here having fun, and I'm trying to keep it light, because you have enough drama to deal with at home and everything like that. So, but just like your best friends are the ones that tell you, hey, you're messing up. Hey, you're drinking too much. Hey, you're whatever. And then your acquaintances are the ones that are like, oh no, everything's fine. So you have to, and I'm sure that's very hard for advocates, especially when you're dealing with a stranger. And there's a lot riding. Well, you feel like there's a lot of pressure on you because you're like, what if I fail at this? And one of the pieces of advice I would say is get all that in mind, because that's what's going to like clog your energy to where you're not going to flow properly. Because you think about children, is one of the good things about them is that they are carefree and they can let things slide. So I think one of the things is to make sure that you allow that process to stay naturally in place. And of course you get to know the child. But like one of the things that my advocate did that really stuck out for me was at that time was Beavis and Butthead movie just came out. And he had to be 16 or something like that to see it, and I was only like 10. And she actually snuck us in to see the movie, which was awesome, right? And she's like, don't tell anybody, so I didn't tell any of you guys. But I could tell, like, now of course at the time it was just awesome because I really wanted to see the movie, but now in hindsight I realized what she was doing was she was like kind of breaking that ice of, look, I'm here to like show you something else, something new. Which I think that should be the aim, to show these children that are, really they're in very peculiar situations, and that, like you said, there's abuse, tons of abuse, and tons of psychological harm that's done. And I think one of the things that a mentor can do is be a little bit of a buffer that, brings them back to home base, and that's what things stuck at me. Like my advocate she was a psychologist. She was going to school for psychology, so she understood how to do those games, and she actually taught me some, which stuck out to me as well. But one of the other things she did that really stuck out, she would always take us to do charitable things. Like we would go out and like dress up as, like one time I was Tasmanian Devil, and we would help other kids that were, down in the luck too. And that really stuck out to me too, and got me into the mindset, like you said, it's you always get this mindset, oh, it could be worse, which I got really good at that, which has helped me a lot in later years, because I mean the truth is it always can be a lot worse. And the funny thing is when you talk to people that don't go through any abuse, and and of course they're always like, oh my God, like you went through a war basically, which you kind of you do go through a war. And you're always like, because you get really strong, you get callous, you get really strong, and you're like, and then you start feeling like, I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. And the one thing to pay attention for the children is that they start actually feeling like that. They're like, I for a while felt like I was burdening the CASA worker, because I was like, but then I started realizing like, she actually liked it. Now, she was really good at it, so she was able to do it. But her method, I think, was very effective with, like I said, showing me that we could do some fun things that were necessarily against the rules a little bit, and then and she got me into doing like charitable things. She really showed me that you can turn your pain and your everything that you went through into positive stuff. Like you actually can do it. Like there's nothing that, says that just because you went through this, you have to be like those people. And that's what really stuck out to me, because I would go out into the world and I'd see people that are like nice people, smart people, intelligent people, caring, endearing, all that. And then I'd go home and I'd be like, what is wrong with these people? And I started looking at their life situation, and I started realizing they weren't happy about anything, like at all in their life. So, and then the first thing I was like, all right, I got these two examples. I was like, when I would go to school, teachers are nice and everything like that. I'm like, I like the teacher. The teacher seems like she's actually trying to help my life, And I go home, and so like a lot of times, some of them you can tell are just pretending because they get checks, for doing it, which they don't have to do it either. I know that was one of the things. They already had all their kids, and again the burden thing comes up. But part of me also says they tried in their way. They actually did try, and part of it I think is to be empathetic to the fact that everybody is going through something. Even the people that were abusing you probably were abused. Like I found that out about a bunch of them. Like their lives were very abusive, so they kind of rolled on, which is not a good excuse, of course, but it helps you forgive them and help. That's the most important thing, so it helps you heal. So I think one of the things that you could focus a lot on with the children is helping them see those kinds of spins and tunings of their experience. Like, hey, because sometimes your knee-jerk reaction is to immediately be like super dramatic with them, like, oh my God, this is horrible, which, that's kind of what the first thing that pops to your head, but when you think about it, it's kind of the last thing they need at the moment, but you can't really help it. But if you are actually trying to think of ways, like, to get insight, I would say the number one thing that helped me in that regard would be that, like, understanding that, first of all, have a little bit of just sympathy and understanding for everyone else, like even the ones that are harming you. That's the hardest one, like love thine enemy, as you get in the Bible. That is the real trick to pull off. So now a kid, like Mr. Miyagi, we're going to trick the kid into thinking that, hey, I can turn this lemon into lemonade. So, and of course that comes down to you guys have to experiment in your own ways. Like those were a couple examples. But I'm telling you, like I said, you already know how to do it because you already were a kid. Like you know how to do this. You just haven't probably thought about it or done it, but you'll see. And it's really fun experimenting and seeing different results from kids. Like I did a rehab type program where I took, they were adults, but they acted like children all the time. But they, all types of different life problems. And so I had an idea, I played music, and I was like, maybe, I always felt like music helped me, like meditatively and emotionally and everything like that. So I was like, maybe I could use this gift to offer these people that no one wants to help because they didn't deserve any of it. And I realized that is, a lot of people would always say to me, why are you helping those type of people? They'd be frustrated because you wouldn't get a lot of good dividends back on your investment. And I'd be like, well, that's the point. I was like, because the people that already know what they're doing and they know how to handle all this, they don't need your help. You think that mindset, like I'm going to go help the easiest person that is deserving of it. Well, most of the people that are deserving of your help don't need your help. That's the real trick, is to figure out that it's really the people you can't stand to be around. That or you can't, like when you look at that child's predicament and you're like, that's too much. That's the one you want to do, because that's where you'll get all of your growth from with the child. And then you'll see when the child sees you doing that, they pick it up instinctively. Because children are like that. They like really look around for examples. Like for instance, I was really into Captain Planet, so I went through an environmentalist phase, and like I would even like attack my brother if he nailed too many nails in the tree when we were building tree forts. He didn't like it, but he knew it. Now he says it all the time. He goes, yeah, but I was doing it to antagonize you, so I was getting what I got. So he's being fair. But and I have one experience when I was at school where it was back when George Bush Sr. was president, and we were in the war, and I refused to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance And the teacher was like, why are you not standing up for Pledge of Allegiance? And I was like, I'm upset. And she's like, what are you upset about? And I was like, looks like they're doing a lot of pollution with all the bombs. And like, you know, they showed it on pictures and there's smoke and everything like that. And then the teacher was like, oh, we're help, and she's trying to help. She's like, we're stopping a bad man. And I was like, did the bad man come over here and pollute our place? And she's like, no. And I was like, all right, I'm done with the president until he stops polluting everything. And I got suspended for that, which is funny. But and then like those types of things, like there are all kinds of activities. Like me and my girlfriend, we like the idea of take children out to clean up litter. It's a little easy, and at first they always fight it. They always do, and everybody kind of does. I did it with my rehab program too. And I was like, before we play music today, because they all got they fell in love with it, because most of them they couldn't do any of it. They couldn't put a group together. They couldn't have equipment because they'd sell it for drugs. And they all had very bad attitudes. So there was no hope of them having an actual group do anything. So what I did was it was so funny, I put them all together. And it was so funny just watching them interact together, because they were always doing to each other what the other was doing back to them. And then just being like, can you believe they're doing that? And I'm like, that's what you just did yesterday. Yes, I can. I'm like, can't you see this? And then you see that, no, they can't. People really feel that their perspective, their relative perspective is it, because it is. So that's the other thing you have to pay attention to, is obviously you got to get to know everyone. Every child is different, every single one. And you have to, I'd say the best way to approach it would be obviously very open-minded, and kind of, because you have to learn how to teach. You learn best by actually doing it. So I'd say anytime you get a chance that, even just kids around the neighborhood, your families, all the kids in your guys' family, you practice on them all the time. It's fun. You can watch what they do. But one of the, I would say, now of course, not everybody has to strive to be a mentor that turns a kid into a prodigy or anything like that. You have to, really all you have to do is realize within you the truth of actual service to another creature for no other reason other than that that is something that it takes a lot of courage to do, especially with children. It does. But as you notice when you're doing it, it doesn't actually feel that way. It's almost second nature. Like if you see a child hurt or a child going to fall off the back, you just run over it and you just grab them. There's no, humans are like that. And I think that's one of the things that's great about these kind of programs, is you take a situation that's very just negative in all aspects, and both parties get to fulfill a destiny for each party, because the advocate wants to save a child, and the child can give them a gift by actually allowing themselves to be saved, which obviously sometimes you have kids that don't want, they feel like they don't want to. They really don't. Like my brother had a little bit more of a rough course than me. I guess in a way when you get to see examples, I got to learn from his mistakes a lot of time. But he was abused a lot, in ways that still last with him today. But he's I've helped him face those things, and he's a totally different person than he used to be, which is great. So I'd say in some of these examples, they work. And one of the things I had to do, which was hard, was I had to learn to let him be himself and enjoy it, not just survive it. Actually, and that's hard to do. But when you think about it, it's one of the things that really helped me was a little game where I would say it to myself, sometimes I'd be like, God, why did you give me this brother? Why did you do this to me? I already got enough. And then when I got older and I started learning, some psychology and everything like that, I started thinking, I like who I am now. I like how I think now. And I was like, I had to go through exactly what I went through to get to where I am now. And that's it might be a silly mental trick, but it works very well, because if you really honestly, because I believe that, so that actually changed my perception of my brother. When I saw him as a burden, it flipped him into a blessing in disguise, which is very powerful in psychology, because when that simple flip, and you can do that with any situation, and it can have very, very big results that you did not expect to see at all. That's the fun part right there, is remembering that you are experimenting, you know, the little free agents running around doing whatever they want. And that's part of the fun of it, though, is because, you know, like there's this whole saying about like the love potion paradox. You don't want to you don't want somebody to love you because you put a spell on them, or because they're afraid. You want them to love you because they actually do love you. Now, of course, with a kid that's being abused and everything like that, you'll find a lot of, you know, resistance to that. You will. And that can be, to you at first, it doesn't feel very good. Because the first thing that pops into your mind is like, I don't know how to do this. This is hard, you know. And then there's somebody else feelings involved now. And then you think, oh, what if I let the child down? That's all fine and normal. Go ahead and think it. But don't fester on it. Don't let it stop. Because even if you go see these kids one time, I'm telling you, like I said, you just go take them and help and take them out and pick up trash with them. They'll remember it. Kids remember this kind of, especially when they're coming out of those environments. And you just talk to them like, you know, I say a normal person, but you gotta remember the people that we are with, they're not normal. They're not. So just you being a normal person, be like, oh no, you shouldn't feel that way. And reassure them why. Because in that setting, like one thing our father would do, he would take us to department stores and hardware stores, and he would make us help him shoplift things. And then he would take us back and make us return the products. And like, we got in trouble many times because of it. But at the time, because I was just a little boy, I was like, oh, my dad is cool, you know. And then I started shoplifting, and I got in trouble, you know, it was trouble for that kind of stuff. But, you know, it took a little while, but it didn't take very long, because I spent time with him, and I could see all these different situations where he had a chance to do something not selfish, even in the smallest way, and like, you know, never failed. Always chose literally the most selfish path you could imagine. Like even if it was started off very selfish, he'd find a way to make it even more selfish. He's very talented in that way. But you could also see in him, kind of not actually aware of what he's doing. You know, he's like, this is normal, because he was abused. You know, and the thing is, like I said, keeping in mind that these kids you're going to be kind of in a strange way battling with negative reinforcement from them. So you got to find a system that allows you to kind of, you know, be like, hey, psst, that's not how you want to be, you know. And you got to figure it out for the kids. Sometimes the kids, you know, kids are intuitive too in a way, and they get that. Like I said, I got that pretty fast just by looking at two examples beside each other. I was like, okay, I don't like anything, I'll just pay attention to my energy. I was like, I don't like anything that I feel when I think about how they just did that to that person, or they did. Like one thing that I noticed too is, and then people usually abuse animals too. They would have all these dogs, and they'd have them all chained up outside in the wintertime on like 1 foot chains. And I'm just like, and it really broke my heart, because I mean, there was nothing I could really do about it, you know, because if I said anything or anything like that, you know, I would get, you know, severely injured. So one of the things that, like I said, is like the Miyagi technique, is think of ways that you can cleverly slip in those kind of reinforcements to the child of what is normal to you, which to them is like, oh, I should worry about, you know, I should care about this, because the first thing in their mind is, no one cares about me, so there's no, you know, everybody has that "what's in it for me" attitude. You know, why? When I was a kid, I was always like, well, why am I going to be nice? If I'm nice, what's it going to get me? Which is totally not a good way to think, you know. But we all have a way of kind of just naturally thinking that way. And what you learn from being a volunteer and doing services, you learn that there's a lot in it for you to help someone. That stuff you don't know about until you do it. I'm sure everybody remembers that first sensation. Oh wow, why when I go out and I help this person and I give food to the homeless. Sometimes I play like music just at a shelter or a nursing home or something like that. And on paper, when I would look at that, I'd be like, that's not exciting at all. There's nothing in that for me. And that's the first hurdle you gotta get over, but I'm sure you all have already got over it, that's why you're here. And then the thing that's most important about that is when you're actually in that zone, everything around you that is, and kids are, they look up to adults. I remember when I was younger, I looked up to every adult. I thought, and it's funny now I'm 34 now. When I was very young, I thought 34-year-olds were adults. And now I'm like, wait a second, we're not adults. It's kind of funny. But I remember as a kid, I'm like, 34-year-old man, guy knows something, maybe it's 34. And the thing with the kids, and keeping that in mind, that's one of the good things is that the kids are in that kind of little enchanted reality, even when they're going through that stuff. Because one thing you'll find is a lot of them, like me, it kind of made my imagination a little bit more intense because it was a way to escape. I would read a lot, write a lot, draw a lot, just anything to kind of like keep them away from me. Because if you're just sitting there doing something, they kind of leave you alone. Sometimes. But yes, I would say the most important aspect that helped me from my advocate was them obviously taking the time and really being creative, be imaginative, and remember that's all. It's not a right or wrong thing. Like you can do it as soon as you start doing it. You'll see. And even when you start just doing a little bit, you'll get the result keeps you going, keeps building up in you, and then you're going to be you won't even know you're good at it, and you'll just be good at it. But the other thing to remember is that it doesn't matter if the kid grows up to be a Nobel Prize laureate or anything like that. Even if you help them that one time, that one day, that is like, it will help them in the future. It will change their path because they wouldn't normally be experiencing any of those things. Like I grew up in a trailer park. It was pretty much like a ghetto. And one thing that stuck out to me in that situation was I had a friend, one of my best friends. He lived in it was like a train car. It was crazy. Like the whole floor was falling out of it. But he had the most loving family. Like I would always sneak over. I had a much better trailer than him, and I would but I would always be sneaking over to his. And people in school would always be like, "Why do you go to that kid's house? They're like it's decrepit. It's falling apart." And I was like, "You don't understand. Like the house is full of love." And it was. Like they would sit down and have dinner every day. Mom and dad would do homework with them and all that stuff. And that, I get, in a way, is what, as an advocate, you're trying to be. You're trying to be a sort of a balance that, because they're not going to get it anywhere else. They're really not. Like, sometimes luck will happen. But my advocate really helped me, and it was one of the most difficult times in my life. And I think that having that advocate really shaped my whole future, just by seeing someone doing that. And she really loved it. So I think that's all I have to say about this. Thank everybody for coming. And I'll see you at Nancy Roll.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Our next speaker, Miss Billy Travelin.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to run this up a second. I'm going to kind of have this in two stages. One, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then some notes that I sort of put together so that I can sound a little bit more intelligible probably than the first part. Okay, hi. First I want to thank the first two speakers. You were fantastic, and it's amazing, you know, different gender, different age, but it's the same experience. It's just the same experience keeps repeating itself. I was placed in foster care from birth, and the way I understand it is that my mother got very sick, so they kept her in the hospital. My father, I later learned, he had issues during that time, and he had accused her of poisoning him at different times. But on the paperwork that I was able to get, it said for economic reasons. That's something very interesting about the system. And I wish I could say that it just was the old days, but it's not the old days because it still goes on. And that is that minimalizing and not risking saying something that on paper that might come back. You know, it's the same way with employment, that, you know, you leave a job and they don't say, what a screw up, we'd never hire him again. That doesn't happen. You know, they just don't say anything real glowing. But I went to a foster mother, and I was very, very blessed. Well, actually, by the time I was like 2, I was with 4, but I only remember the one, so to me, I like to think I had it from the beginning. But her name was Mama Cope, that's what I called her, that's what I always remember. And we were a good fit, a really good fit. I was a very quiet child, probably from being bounced around, you know, with the first couple. One of them, I was told at the Children of Durham, Delaware, turned me back in because she got pregnant with her own child. So now that she could actually have, you know, her child, you know, I didn't fit the bill anymore. But Mama Cope, she loved me and I loved her. And I can remember her reading to me. And I remember by the time like 5, you know, she had read me completely Huckleberry Finn, which I'm a writer, so you know that's a good fit when a 5-year-old's going to listen to, you know, the entire Huckleberry Finn as a bedtime stories. But and that's something to be said about that, because there's nothing wrong with admitting you're not the right fit. You know, as adults we have to do that sometimes. I mean, we have to even guard that when we have our own children. That when we feel a little bit closer to one than the other, because instinctively we are more like that child. Or maybe it's the opposite. We're more like the child we don't quite get along with because we see something in that child that mirrors us, and that's a little bit too close for comfort, you know? But when I lived with Mama Cope, and it came to the day when she said that she wanted to adopt me. And I asked her what it meant, and she said that we would go to a court, and then he would, you know, make a decision to make it permanent. And I told her right off I didn't have a good feeling about it, because I didn't know that judge, and I didn't see how he could make any decision about us that we didn't already know was good. Well, she just said my faith was sagging a bit, and you know, and it would be all right. But it wasn't all right, because my father told the judge he didn't really care, but my mother said that blood is thicker than water, and we can't give up our own child. Who at that point they were strangers, you know, like strangers in the supermarket. But the the judge in his wisdom said the parents, biological parents, deserve a chance. So I went from middle-class Catholic, you know, with a loving, loving mother, to a lower class. My mother had been brought up, her whole family was well off, Quakers actually, but her mother had married an Episcopalian who was also well off, but he was a drunk. So the bottom line is she couldn't save her father, but she was going to save this man she met on the street and had a story just as sad as, you know, her father's. So, you know, I'm gonna make her happy. I mean, she told me that later in life. Well, she couldn't make him happy, and she couldn't save him because you can't do that. So, my father, when I went home, the first thing I remember was having a meal and everybody's eating, and there's just an open can of beans, baked beans on my plate. And he said, eat them. And my mother said, what are you doing? He says, Mama Cope said she likes beans, so eat the beans. You know? So he was scary with like dark crow-like scary eyes, so I ate the beans. And he liked to do things like that, you know, like you're not paying attention and the whack, the salt or pepper shaker would come at me. And then it got worse and worse. And one day he said, you know, come here, bathtub. And I was like, okay, embarrassed. The first thing I remember is feeling embarrassed because that's not a name, you know? And another time he called me Bugs. And it wasn't until later that I realized that he was not even giving me a human name. That was a way to dehumanize me. And, you know, then, you know, he became, you know, physically abusive. But I look back and I know my father was a damaged man. It doesn't excuse anything. But instinctively, and probably because of the love and caring I had for Mama Cope, that somehow I understood the difference between a well person and a sick person. And my father screamed sick to me. Because in my eyes, no loving parent does what he did. You know, I was 6, you know, well, maybe by that time, like 9, 10 years old. But I knew. I instinctively knew it. And so I also knew that if I was going to get by, if I was going to survive, that wherever he was, I had to not be. You know, so I was really careful about that. But also going back home, I had 2 sisters that I never knew. And one of them was, she had not gone to foster care, and one of them had also went to foster care. And when I grew up, my name's Billy Elizabeth, but everybody called me Betsy, and her nickname her foster mother gave her was Bootsy. So, but Bootsy was my protectorate. She was a tomboy that could bat, run. I mean, nobody could do it better. You know, in school, I mean, she was just an amazing athlete. So she was my father's favorite because he really wanted a boy. And of course, she didn't want to be a boy, but you know, that was her job in the family. But she went to amazing lengths to protect me, especially when he became sexually abusive towards me and would send everybody off to the store because we could walk a couple blocks up to the grocery store, except me, and he would say he needed me home. And did my mother know? Of course she knew. I mean, how could you not know? But sometimes when things are too ugly, we don't want to know them, you know? And so my sister would always find a way to run back home. And it was, I mean, I told you she was an athlete. It was like within 5 minutes at the most, she was back home and she was pounding on the bedroom door. And my father would be like so pissed off, come on, get up, you know, and all. And, but anyway, all that, when you're under enough stress, and foster kids, you know, a lot of times were once abused kids, whether you had alcoholic, drug addictive parents, or whatever the situation was. You're living in an abusive situation because when a child cannot live as a child, that's abusive. And as I said, when you're under enough stress, either mentally or physically, eventually you're going to break down. And in my case, it was physical. I began losing weight, I began having high fevers, and my father would just kick my ankles and, you know, say, you know, walk or squeeze my swollen hands and say, smile, God damn it, I told you to smile. And I got sick, and, you know, and the reason I got sick is because I developed lupus and scleroderma and rheumatoid arthritis all at the same time, the real trifecta. That's really rare, actually. At one point my father had said that, well, he was coming after me with a butcher knife at the time, and he said, the reason he was coming after me, I should add, is that he was acting, quote, inappropriate again, and I said, when Mommy comes home, I'm going to tell her the truth. And he got this butcher knife. He said, come on, baby, come on, come on, come on. It'll just look like an accident. Well, my sister heard from the other room, and she came in and got a pair of shears out of the bottom of the buffet, and he had kicked me to the floor, and he had this like knife like this, and you know, my sister had the shears, and she just raised them really high, and in the calmest voice imaginable, she said, put the knife down or I will kill you. And he looked at her and he said, oh, I was just kidding. Lindsay, I was just kidding. To this day, it amazes me how when people do the most just bizarre things, like take a knife to their daughter, that they can say something like that. I was just kidding, you know? But anyway, so from there I was, well, at that point he was determined to put me in Governor Bacon Health Center, which was a center for unwanted kids in Delaware. If you had cerebral palsy, they emptied out part of Stokely, where a lot of the kids at that time, it was called retarded, but lower intelligence. You were sent, you were just, you know, hemophilia, blind kids. So I was put down in the hospital unit with them. That was my father's goal, because he said once I was there, nobody would believe me. You know, because, you know, if you're put away, you know, that's, something must be wrong with you. And of course it was mental. But it's really amazing to me how many people could have saved me, could have helped me, and didn't. And it's kind of amazing to me that when I look back, that the ones that really did were men. The neighbor's father, they had a little place down Rock Hall, Maryland, and when they were going down, he would always say to his daughters, ask Betsy if she wants to come along. You know, or ask Betsy if she wants to come over to dinner sometime. And I didn't put two and two together until years later. He was very big in the Lions Club. And I happened to be something by the Lions Club, and he was there, and he says, oh, Betsy, and everything, and all. And, oh, I'm going to choke up. And I saw, I saw in his eyes how happy he was that I was safe and that I was successful. And then I knew that it wasn't just coincidence that he had always said, you know, have her come, have her come. You know, and it was another neighbor too that I had the blessing, I must say, to live next door to a holy roller who hated her husband but played holy roller music from 7 to 11. But the husband was a good guy. He had a garbage truck, you know, with the big flapping boards in those days. And he would save me Coke bottles and, you know, things that you could take up to the store and get, you know, some change for and all. And he was always very kind to me. And he'd always say to me, listen, yeah, you know, if you ever need me, you let me know. And he too, I know, was trying, you know, in those days when there weren't advocates, when there weren't people that did what is so needed, you know, today, to be the voices of children. But down at Governor Bacon, you know, both speakers talked about, like, you know, things can be worse. And the only thing that could have been worse in my life, the worst thing in my life, was not being with my sister. That was the worst part of Governor Bacon. You know, that, and, you know, not being with her. And things got worse for her too. But down at Governor Bacon, I was put with the cerebral palsy kids, and I was really sick, and sometimes I went up to the Delaware Hospital. They did do that. But there were kids there that they had no voice, and they didn't have the ability to speak for themselves. And I remember one little boy, Jimmy, he was 2 years old, and he was there because his grandparents dearly loved him. They had custody of him. And they had a physical therapist there, Miss Heglin, who was like Attila the Hun, but she didn't mean well, but whew. They were hoping to get him more physical therapy so he would be more mobile. Well, one night I woke up and he was crying. I mean, wow, I'd never heard him. He was like a banshee, and so I was listening, and the aides were spanking him hard for wetting the bed. Now he had cerebral palsy; he couldn't get up. But for whatever demons they carried from their home life, and you're talking about minimal wage and not having support at your job and all, you know, it's one reason why people who work to support others should be paid a decent wage. They were taking it out on him. Well, it was Saturday the next day, and his grandparents always came on Saturday to take him out and to visit and all. And so he was still crying, and the grandfather, there was a thin partition between where I was and he was, and he walked around it, and he said to me, "Why is Jimmy so upset? Do you know why he's so upset?" And I go, "Shh." I said, "He wet the bed last night and they whooped him." I said, "Shh." And he just went, "Okay." And he went back around, and within about maybe 5 minutes, you know, the grandfather was carrying little Jimmy, and the grandmother had his little suitcase in his hand, and that was the end. But for the first time, I felt like what it really means to have a voice, you know, to make a difference. You know, and there was another girl, Janet, who had cerebral palsy, and she had big braces on her legs, and they were really, and she was a heavy girl, and when she would run, and they would kind of clang almost, and she kind of actually lunged from side to side, and one day she comes home from school, and she, because I was too sick at that time to even to go out, and she's like laughing and happy, and I said, "Janet, what's going on?" She goes, "I'm in love," and she had come from Stokely. She was, you know, severely mentally challenged, and And I said, what do you mean you're in love? And she goes, I'm in love. Well, it took a lot of work, but immediately I suspected something wrong. Just, you know, that's part of being a foster kid. When you talk about a blessing, that is a blessing, because you become extremely intuitive. You have to be intuitive. It's part of survival, and it just becomes part of who you are. And I knew something was wrong, and she told me that her teacher had put her on the desk, and well, first she made me promise not to tell, cross my heart, hope to die, and I did, because she gave me no choice. And then she told me, and I looked at her, and I regretted promising, but then I said to her, I said, Janet, if you are 5 minutes late from school, ever, I'm going to tell on you, and they're going to come and get you. And I still remember, you know, I can see in the back of my head just her, like, doing her walk, you know, the lunge in her, the way she did, just walking away. You know, and I don't know exactly what happened after that, or whether she said something, because she wasn't, you know, too clever. But, you know, about a month later, he did leave. I didn't say anything. Maybe I should have. I was 13 years old, you know. But anyway, from there, the records show that the center had deemed my parents unamendable to any kind of counseling, because my mother claimed that I was like the devil, but at the same time, they saw clear signs of her experience, what they called overwhelming guilt. And they also said that my father could not focus whatsoever, and would break up conversations talking about what the kids need here is comic books, and you know, just clearly, if you look at the records, neither parent was capable of being a parent. But in the state's wisdom, which means let's save money and let's not rock the boat, they sent me home. Well, within a couple of months, that's really stretching it, probably was weeks, but my father tried to come in my room, and he tried to start over. And the next morning, I said to my sister, I won't be here when you come home from school tomorrow. And she said, where are you going? I said, I don't know, but I won't be here. And she said, no, I need you. I said, I won't be here, because I knew I wouldn't survive. So I said, here, and I gave her this beautiful, the most precious thing I had was, I told you about, I had Quaker, you know, relatives, and my Quaker grandmother, who had tried to help me, had given me this 14-karat gold pin with this sapphire. It was really quite beautiful, especially for a child that had nothing. I mean, it was quite a valuable pin. And my parents didn't even know I had it. I said, here, because it's the most precious thing I had. I gave it to her. And she gave me 3 bars of Yardley lavender soap, which was the most precious thing that she had. And so I went to school. I never missed a day at school. I was a very good student. Of course, the teachers thought I was pretty marginalized. Not that I was in a bad group. I was usually like in, you know, a B or B-ish group. At Governor Bacon, they actually have one record that they're not sure what my intelligence was, but they're estimating it's probably around 94. Which is interesting, because I probably should be written up someplace, because I graduated Phi Beta Kappa magna cum laude from Delaware and got a full scholastic scholarship for grad school through Temple. So on a 94 IQ, I have done amazingly well. But the problem is with foster kids, it's often you become what you're expected to become, what you're expected to be, not who you are. You know, you're marginalized downward, never upward, you know? And so after school, you know, a friend from school, that's one thing, I had a lot of friends. I had no safety net. School was my safety net. Studying was my safety net. Bill Clinton and I had that in common. He wrote that one time about when his father was shooting at the mother and all. Yeah. And so she comes meeting up with me and she says, where are you going? I said, I don't know. She goes, oh, come on home with me. Her father was alcoholic. People know more than they know. You know, yeah, we just need to talk about it a little bit more. But anyway, so within about an hour of me being there, and her mom was there, her dad wasn't home, but there's a knock on the door, and her mother says, come here. She says, go in the bedroom, get in the closet, you know, just stay there. So she opens it, and I hear her say, no, I haven't seen, you know, she called me Elizabeth. I had more names growing up than a little bit. I haven't seen Elizabeth. And I hear my father say, oh, she's got medicine. Her mother and I are worried about her, and, you know, we need to find her. He's worried about what I'm saying to whom. So she goes, I'll let you know. Well, from there, she made a call to this minister of this small Methodist church that was nearby in Swanwick, and it's in Newcastle. And so he said, come on over, which was awkward because he was having a sexual affair with a friend of mine at school, and he's this minister, and he's married, and it just never ended. So, but he had a very nice wife, thank God, and he's another person who's complex. I don't think he's a terrible, you know, he wasn't an evil man to me or anything, but, you know, she was 15 years old, come on. And so I was there like a couple weeks and back in court. And back in court, this time it was a different judge, Judge Melson. And my father suggested that I go to Woods Haven, which was for like incorrigible, you know, girls. And I never even bagged a class at school, let alone done, you know, ran away or did any. I guess that was run away, but I called it a walk away. Then he said that no, I needed to be, you know, in Farnhurst, the state hospital, because that I was telling people I was blind. You know, that was just like telling my sister, I'm just kidding. That was another one of those moments. And then the judge is looking at him, and I think my father picked up on that because he said, well, Judge, she is our daughter, you know, and it's difficult, but she belongs home. So that Judge Melson said, you know, Mr. Tompin, you just wanted me to send your daughter to Woods Haven and to Farnhurst. He said, the last place I would send her is home. So he sent me to the children's home in Claymont, where then I went to live at their group home for girls on Broome Street and Wilmington High, which was my fourth high school, which I graduated from. So that was sort of like growing up. As far as since then, after I graduated from college, I was a journalist for years. At one point, and I don't know what's the timing like? Am I like over my time?
You have time.
Oh, okay. Because after I graduated, one thing kept coming back to me is the kids of Governor Bacon, that I would be their voice, and that I would, you know, I'm like a tiger. You know, if somebody's in a store or somebody's not dressed well, and somebody treats that person differently, you know, like tries to wait on me if I'm just, excuse me, he's next, you know, it's just very annoying. But I was a journalist, and I was married. I have an autistic son, and he's taught me a lot too. And when he had a breakdown, he was 20. My husband left because, in his words, he didn't want to. You know, we didn't want to be stuck with Mark the rest of our lives. Well, maybe he didn't, but I don't feel like I'm stuck. I mean, he's a good person. But I had to kind of start over, you know, and I was a full-time teacher at Lincoln University for years, but after the divorce, I became a full-time at Wilmington University, plus I developed lesson plans and taught at all the detention centers. And sometimes I have to have Ellen bring in, I had them tell me their stories through lesson plans I developed, and they wrote poems and they wrote stories, and a lot of them were foster kids, and some of them didn't ever want to leave because they had no place to go. And some of them got in trouble just to come back, and that would like break your heart, you know. And I also taught the Boys and Girls Club, and there were foster kids there that I worked with too. So yeah, I'm a writer, and if there's time, I was going to read a little bit of the notes that I had prepared. It stuck out to me too. It was saying about going to somebody else's house, and it could be really old and broke down, but no matter what, you know, if there was love, and that is really true. I'm a writer. I'm primarily a writer. Actually, I was lucky. Just notified last month that I got the Delray Division of the Arts Masters Fellowship, and that's for community service and writing, which comes with like $10,000, which is a big deal. And I got the thank you. And I got the last year I was a national, well, the 2018-19 Communicator of Achievement for the National Federation of Press Women, because that's for my journalism. So it's really nice, but there's a big thing about, you know, earning any kind of award, because somebody will say that's great, and I'll say, yeah, now I got the rest of my life, you know, because you really don't, you know, you win an award, but you spend the rest of your life earning it. That's the way I feel, you know, because, you know, you win it today, tomorrow's a new day. But going back to, you know, the way other people, the way other families look to you. I had written this little, I'm not primarily a poet, but I wrote this little poem, and it was about that. I had a girl, a friend, sort of friend, in 5th grade. I say that because I always had friends in school. Even when I had problems walking, somebody would say, why are you walking like that? You're limping. I go, oh, I hit my head, or oh, my leg is asleep, or, you know, can't you turn your neck? Oh, no, I'm sore. Because I didn't want a disability to define me. I didn't want the conversation to be about what was, quote, wrong with me. You know, that wasn't what was important, so let's just skip over that to me. But this one goes back to this friend, and I had a friend, and she was, you know, very popular, and, you know, and we got along, but I liked everybody. But this friend wasn't a friend of my friends, but I found her interesting. And one day she invited me over her house. Well, she was a very physically unattractive girl, so I was expecting to meet very physically unattractive parents, and I felt kind of sorry for her. So it's called Anatomy of a Frog. Harriet Hackensack always made me smile. I loved how she could turn ugly into pretty, as if the two were completely interchangeable. Like two well-chosen synonyms standing in the same space at the same time. Every day in the 4th grade girls' room, she would glance in the mirror at her twisted nose and too small chin, and a look of pure satisfaction would come into her eyes. Don't have to worry about kidnapping, she would say, as if being ugly was the best thing imaginable. At 9, I studied her as if she was a frog. I needed to dissect to see if the inside and the outside matched. It felt odd, really. Poking the point of a popsicle stick into its atrial and ventricle, hoping at any moment the frog would be undead and Harriet's secret to happiness revealed. Because I just was wondering, how did she get to be so loved and I didn't, you know? I mean, I was a damn cute little girl. Okay, this is what I had written. What does it mean to be a foster child? Being a foster child means being different than, quote, normal kids, and constantly being reminded of being different, not normal. And what does the foster kid want? What did I really want? I wanted to be normal. And first on my list of being normal was being safe. I wanted to be safe like other kids, kids who didn't have to worry about being emotionally, physically, or sexually abused. I reasoned that if I was safe, I would matter, because what matters we keep safe. That's just how it is. As for having a preference for a single or two-parent household or a particular race or sexual orientation or religion, I could have cared less. I already knew that one parent can sometimes parent better than two. And race, sexual orientation, or religion doesn't have a damn thing to do with being able to be a good parent. I wanted a white mother or a black mother and father or a Jewish gay father who treated me like a child because I was a child and being a child mattered. Being a foster child also implies a learned silence. All too often, what I wanted to say was too hard to say, and I knew from experience that no one would have believed me anyway. But it is more complicated than that, a lot more complicated. Humans often see and hear what they want to see and hear, because truth can be hard to digest, and it's even harder to forget. Flannery O'Connor, who knew more about human nature than just about anyone who ever lived, put it this way: all humans resist grace because grace changes us, and change is painful. Why? Because grace means looking in the mirror and seeing ourselves as we are, not who we tell ourselves we are. Hell, I knew I was unwanted. I didn't need a mirror to tell me that. I was an abused child. I didn't need a mirror to tell me that either. I had lupus. I didn't need a mirror to tell me that my stiff legs and high fevers made me feel closer to 70 than 13. Still, I would not change my childhood. If I did, I would not be me. And I'm okay being me. In fact, I like being me, except for the need to be needed that won't go away no matter how many times I stomp it to the floor with yet another award. Being a foster child forced me to see life with wide open eyes, like having a fancy house. Things like having a fancy house or a fancy car meant nothing to me. I wanted to be safe and for my legs to work again. And if I was loved, that would be a huge bonus. But being safe was first. Being safe was always first. The single first most important thing a foster child or any child needs is an understanding that no matter how much we are marginalized, no matter how matter who does what or says what about us. None of it matters unless we choose to let it matter. Dignity comes from inside. It is a God-given right, and no one can take it from us unless we choose to do what or believe in what someone else tells us, and replace who we are with who they say we are. This is where having a strong role model comes in. From birth, I had Mama Cope, my foster mother, who taught me what it feels like to be loved and wanted. And this, above all, helped me to understand that while I was seen as just one more unknown other, I was more than that, much more. I learned how to read people. Foster parents, social workers, and doctors thought they knew me, but I knew them far better than they knew me. Foster kids get good at reading people. When a judge took me from Mama Cope to give my birth parents a chance, I quickly learned to read the tone in my father's voice and his footsteps to make sure wherever he was, I wasn't. Years later, I faked being asleep so my foster father would get the hell out of my bed and leave me alone. When I was at Governor Bacon, kids were always wrong and adults were always right. Learned silence came in handy more than once. At Governor Bacon, I wrote my first poem to my father, like a boxer who waits in the ring for the crowd to applaud his busted nose and one good eye. I shield my face knowing you swallow each blow like an untuned piano. At Governor Bacon, I couldn't walk, but I could read. I especially loved history. I couldn't reason why anyone would think white masters understood blacks better than blacks understood them. From where I stood on the social scale, it was obvious that blacks knew whites the way a bomb expert knows that his survival depends on reducing the number and frequency of explosions. This said, it is a mistake to think that the quiet, most compliant foster child is further along, doing well, as they say. While this may be true, it can just as easily be wrong. The foster child who acts out and says, I'm not telling you nothing, it's none of your fucking business, may appear to be non-compliant, but he is also truthful. This, above all, is a starting place for real change to take place. Now, what are the short and long-term goals of the foster kids I was thinking about? The need to be needed and to need others is part of the human condition, but for me, the need to earn my spot on this earth is all-consuming. From a young child, I was determined to matter, to have a voice, and to be the voice of those left out of the conversation. When my father came at me with a butcher knife and said, I'll make sure you never read anything, I knew one day I would be a writer. You see, in some ways, I was still Mama Cope's little girl, and I remembered what it feels like to matter, and nothing my father or anyone could do or say could change that. Still, like many foster kids, I continue to live day to day, convinced that another explosion will happen. I just don't know when. As far as what's being done, I would say that too little is being done to help foster kids successfully maneuver their way through childhood. Childhood puts them last and their, quote, normal counterparts first. Why is this happening? Well, all too often it's money. And two, kids don't vote. And three, all too often also those who are charged, with looking after the welfare of kids are over-empowered and undereducated about the population they're working with. Here I'm not referring to, book knowledge, I'm referring to street knowledge, common sense. Then I said that what do foster kids need? I feel first and foremost, what is most important is someone to listen. Everything begins with listening, truly listening. You know, not being ready to jump in and give advice, because they need to know, feel safe enough to listen, and they have to know you enough to even want your advice. I mean, why, you know, I hear it, you know, when I was at all the detention homes, you know, what's the problem? How can I help you? And the kid's thinking, why the hell should I tell you anything? What are you going to use it for? What, are you going to write it down somewhere? Am I going to get written up? You know? You have to earn trust. You know, and when, you know, when someone's been wounded, you know, you have to, that's part of the package. You have to start where someone's at, not where you think chronologically or emotionally they should be at, but where are they at? And, and I also think it's important for foster kids to come to that ability to, like here, to share their experiences as a way of acknowledging one past. And because that's the surest way to move forward. After all, you know, we were all born to be exactly the person we are. You know, we all make mistakes and we all do things we're proud of. But it's the mistakes that we learn the most from. And I think foster kids need to know that too. You know, you know, you build from that. That's your clay to move and make something more beautiful. You know, Maya Angelou used to say, you know, call it lessons in living. You know, and I said before how important it is not to be marginalized, because being a foster kid is only one part of me. You know, Mama Cope gave me the tools I needed to go through life's rough patches. You know, in other foster homes, you know, it wasn't so loving, but at the bottom, you know, at the end of it all, I believe that when we talk to someone and not at someone, you know, when we're listening, that's a really good starting place, because we're all in this together. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. And everybody, whether you're a foster child or not, has been betrayed or hurt or pain or done something they don't want to tell anybody. We all share the same experiences, and we just really need to open up and understand that we are all in this together. Thank you.